So, ladies and gentlemen, in today's module, we are talking about something that is, I guess, maybe a little bit of a sensitive topic for me, because this is something where I have to hold my hands up and say for years and years, I did it wrong. Kind of like, and we'll get into this in phase 5, kind of like my philosophy around sales over the years, as I went from, having an agency for 12 months to 3 years and being a little bit more of a veteran agency owner, all the way to 5 years and being what I would consider a pretty wise agency owner. Throughout this entire process, I have learned a lot of things, and a lot of things that I thought made sense on paper, in practice didn't work. And communication was one of those things, or at least the way that I used to go about communication. So that's really just a little bit of a prelude before we get into today's module. So with no further ado, let's get straight into it. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are talking about communication and retention. So in today's teaching, we are going to go over how most agencies deal with communication, getting rid of variation and staying streamlined, how to set up with agency flow, how my perception of communication has changed over the years, my agency's communication schedule, how to use different mediums of communication, as well as getting clients to abide by procedure. So as I said, we are going to be talking about the art of communication. Now, most agencies' communication is a total shambles. Their clients feel that they can call them. I mean, to me, the first one's especially ridiculous. They can text them, they can WhatsApp them, they can message them on multiple different platforms, and they think that that's okay. And you need to understand that people will set the protocols that are set for them. Your contractors, your soon to be at some point employees, they will follow the protocols that are set for them. And as well as they will follow the boundaries that you set for them. And that is no different whatsoever when it comes to your clients. And this is why this is a big portion of that onboarding process, which you're going to get very, very soon. A big part of the onboarding process is really setting the tone with clients and letting clients know, hey, this is the way that we do things, and really just giving them guidance and clarity. Because as I said, if you set the tone, if you set the boundaries, as well as if you show a person why it's actually in their best interest to follow those parameters, then pretty much every client I've ever met is extremely, extremely accommodating to that. Now, our communication will be set on one platform, but it will be separate to our personal life, because in the same way you would not mix up your personal expenses and your business expenses, why would you mix up your business conversations and your personal conversations? They should be on two distinct separate platforms, and we will get into that in just a second. Now, another thing that really cripples agency owners out there is variation. Okay, and I guess with variation comes added complexity, because here's the thing: you want to stay streamlined. I'll give you a couple examples of that. At my agency, we speak in one currency, unless, we're talking about a specific client ad account, right? So we speak in one currency. We speak in one time zone. Whenever I tell a client, hey, should we do it at this time? We're always referring to my time zone, which is UK time zone. Same thing with my team. They don't even say, oh, could you do such and such Brazil time or US time, or not really US time, but Pacific time, for example. They never do that. They always do UK time. And the reason we also do UK is because in UK, we do a funny thing where we have a daylight saving. So our clocks actually go back 1 hour, I believe, in the summer. So there's British, BST, British summertime. Yeah, I think it's British summertime, and GMT, Greenwich Mean Time. I think that's what it is. Anyways, point is, we just refer to UK time. And as I said, further to that, we keep all of our communication in one platform, and we just try to keep a nice equilibrium throughout our entire agency. Now, right below this video, you'll be able to find a client communication plug and play, and that will give you, A to Z. You click this button, click that button. Here's how you set everything up. So that way, you know exactly how to set up your, basically your client. And then within that, there's client chats, and this is all done with agency flow. So as I said, all that is step-by-step in the plug and play. I'm just going to give you a bit of a high level view so you understand the way that we do things and we set things up. Oh, also another thing to mention, in that plug and play, I'll also have basically just a summary of what I talked about here in terms of our communication schedule. On what day do we send what, how often are our check-in calls with clients, and at what stage do I recommend however many amount of those check-in calls. Now, once you sign a new client, what you're going to do is you are going to create a new client. You're going to go inside of agency flow. You're going to go to the client section. You're going to create a new client. Now, when you create a new client, obviously it asks you to put in a brief, give them, assign a tag if you want to do that. Obviously give them a name, et cetera, kind of like that preliminary information. But it's also going to ask you to invite the client. So you're going to put in their email, and then you're going to hit enter. And that means that you can put in as many of their team members as you want. So for example, the owner might want to be there, and let's say there's 2 owners, and maybe they also have a CMO, and they have one other person that they feel is important to have there. Then you can just go ahead and put in all their information. bear in mind, you can also go back and add people at a later date. Now, this is really your container. I said everything to do with that client is within that container. Also, bear in mind, when you're filling in the client information, you can also add your team members. So whoever specifically on your team you want this to be visible to. Now, as I said, this is a container. So at any moment, you can just go to clients. You can click on the specific client, and then you can have obviously all your media, your notes, your tasks, your everything congregate in one place. But then you have your chat right there on the right side. If you just want to stay up to date with all of your latest chats, then you can just go to the chat section specifically in Agency Flow, and that's broken down by new. So basically, unresponded to messages. Then we've got clients, projects, and personal. So obviously, all of your client stuff will be in that clients tab. And that is pretty much about it. Your client will get an invitation in their email, and they will have access to Agency Flow. And bear in mind, they're not going to see the same stuff that you're going to see. They have their own, basically Agency Flow is built so that, you as the owner have a different view to an admin, and an admin has a different view to just a contractor or a team member. That's what we refer to them as, and they have a different view to your client. So that way, it's fully custom and tailored to what you want as an agency owner. Now let's just talk real quickly about my outlook on comms, communications. Now, in order to understand how I've come to this place, let's take it right back from the beginning. Now, 2017, I was working with local businesses, so that meant that all of our sort of sales meetings were in person, and that really set the tone for me always coming to their office and us having the meetings that way, and I would aim to do that every 2 weeks. Then, as I transitioned my agency in 2018 from a creative agency, IG Media, even though we still have the shittiest name or still called that, as I transitioned from having a creative agency into having a paid traffic agency, one of the big things I wanted to do as well was really just to make sure that everything was streamlined. So kind of the theme of 2018 was, how much can I remove myself from the business? How much can I automate in the business? And one of the big things that led to was basically second half of 2018 as well as first half of 2019, we would only do one check-in call a month with clients. And I thought that was a smart idea. And as my now CMO, Danny, started to take a more serious role in the business, that's when we started moving to 2 calls per month, because I basically could trust Danny that he could actually take some of those calls without me. And that's what I did in 2019. My goal was, or the rest of 2019, going into the beginning of 2020, I actually didn't go on any of my client check-in calls. And that, I don't think that really caused, no client specifically, and even Danny, I don't think that really caused any friction, or at least nothing was mentioned in terms of it being an issue. But I know that it just wasn't the wise move, because at the end of the day, a leader needs to be a leader. And when it was just me and Danny, I almost put him in a compromised position where he's having to bear all of that responsibility. And with the clients, although we had this stature of being a massive agency, even though we were still only 2 people, and I mean, even us these days, we're still not a massive agency in terms of the amount of people in my team, but we have a lot of esteem because we've been doing this a long time. So as I said, clients didn't necessarily expect me to come in every client check-in call, but I think it wasn't a stage where it was ready, where I was really ready to move away from those check-in calls. So 2020, as I started to bring on our lead performance marketer, Luis, that kind of alleviated some of the stress from Danny, and we were able to really just kind of shift, some of the roles. And Danny moved into a CMO position where he actually took the demo calls, and he was a lot more involved with kind of the high level overview. And Luis was at that stage a bit more of an executioner. Anyways, we actually then moved from 2 calls a week, and we did that. We actually kept that the same thing, bi-weekly calls for the rest of 2020. And as that happened, as Luis came on, that's really the point in which I, once again, removed myself from the check-in calls, which is what I did in 2020, which is what I did in 2019, middle of 2019, kind of going into beginning stages of 2020, the first quarter of 2020. And then the rest of 2020, I was like, okay, no, I need to be on these check-in calls. This is stupid for me not to, because just from a retention perspective and really just the client feeling safe and secure. And then as clients started to realize, okay, Luis is he's a heavy hitter. This is a serious dude. Then I knew that, okay, Danny and Luis can take the calls together. And as I said, kind of right at the end of 2020, I felt comfortable, not really going on check-in calls anymore. And that's pretty much been the story of 2021, because once again, it comes down to framing. So you need to know when is the right position for you to do 2 check-in calls a month, or do 1 a week, or do 1 a month, or do, don't even show up at all. You got to know what stage you're at, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But as I said, now I'm at a stage where, our team is bigger, and people, all of our clients know, okay, Danny is the CMO, and that framing is very strong because of that demo call. And they also know, okay, Luis isn't just another member of the team. This is, he's our sort of star player, out of the team, except for Danny. Now, as I said, I used to think that communication was really a function of service delivery, and I started to realize that communication is actually a way to aid retention. Aside from results, and this is really important for you to understand, aside from results, communication and those check-in calls are by far the biggest attribute and the biggest contributor to your retention rate with a client. I used to think about removing myself from the check-in calls entirely, which, as I said, I did in 2019, which I believe, looking back now, was not a wise move. And I guess now I've done that, but as I said, also my team is a lot bigger these days. And as I said, I would sweat and fester over how to how to have less communication. And these days, we've flipped it on its head. It's like, how do we have as much communication as possible, over communicate with our clients, have such incredible rapport, and that's the big thing, get as much face-to-face time as possible with clients. So these days, we actually do a check-in call weekly for the first month, and then after that, we move to bi-weekly. But especially in that first month, we do weekly check-in calls. So as I said, let's just talk about the communication schedule right here. So for the first month, as I said, we do weekly Zoom calls, then it goes into bi-weekly. Monday, we either try to stuff all of our calls on Monday, so that way it covers the 2 touch points per week that we try to aim for. Or if we don't have a call with them on Monday, then we'll actually send Looms on Monday to all of our clients, unless we've got a call with them that day with a 2 to 5 minute basic update, just as I said, filling in the client on where the campaigns are at. On Thursday, we do a 2 to 3 line update on how the campaigns are doing. This was, and by the way, still is, a means to giving our clients a punchy update and keeping them in the loop. So that's really the main purpose of it, is to just give them a really quick, to the point update. Later, what I started doing was I would actually screenshot the stuff, and it became an incredible marketing tool because I said I would screenshot it and post it on social media. And this kind of ties into some of the profile funnel stuff we're going to talk about in the next phase. Best part about this is it looks super organic because it's literally just Danny updating the clients, and I'm able to post it. And as I said, it just looks very natural, non-try-hardy. Now, last thing is the Client Bible. Now, the Client Bible is our reporting tool that is constantly updated, and this is given to you in later phases, so watch out for that. Now, outside of these updates that we provide to clients, if they ever want any more clarity, they can always just refer to the Client Bible. Now, if you are deciding whether to have weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly calls, it all comes down to where you are in your agency journey. If you only have 3 or 4 clients, do weekly, right? Now, if, your client may go, okay, there's no point to do weekly. And in that case, do bi-weekly. But if a client is keen and wants to do it, then do weekly, because that face-to-face time is such an incredible asset for retention. Now, as you grow, you can make the calls less frequent. And when I say less frequent, I mean rather than weekly calls, you do bi-weekly calls. Because look, even if you have 20 clients, the check-in calls are 30 minutes on average. So 20 clients, 30 minutes. So each client, and twice a month. So each client, that's an hour of check-in calls per month. That's 20 hours a month out of a 160-hour work month. So 20 hours out of 160 in a work month. But what that does to your retention is insane, honestly. Now, once you evolve, join CPA, and really take your agency to the next level, that is where you're going to find someone like Danny who can act as a CMO and confidently take all of the calls without you being present. So you can have someone like that, or what a lot of CPA students that have local biz clients and they've got 20, 30, 40 of these clients, is they'll have basically like a client manager, right? So, they refer to them as like a COO or just a client care manager, something like that, right? And this person is basically there on every single team call, gets updates from clients, has a decent level of understanding about how to actually get results and communicate with clients, and then relay that back to the performance marketers or copywriters or whatever service that it is that you offer. Now, once you have someone like that who can actually take the calls, whether that be a CMO, for example, me with Danny, or you've got like a client relations manager, whatever it is that you have, basically someone who is outside of yourself that can take the calls without you being there, then you can actually move it back to weekly calls, because as I said, it is a massive, massive asset. Now, you might be wondering, what happens if a client does not follow communication protocol? Well, if it's the first time or the second time, and let's say they email you rather than using, let's say use Agency Flow, use Slack, whatever it is to use. We obviously the assumption is most of you will be using Agency Flow, so we use that as an example. Let's say someone messages you on WhatsApp, or they email you, or they call you, rather than reaching out in the client hub. Then what you're going to do is you're going to acknowledge that you've seen their message elsewhere, and you're just going to go, hey, John, saw that you sent me a Facebook message. Once again, just a quick reminder, we only use Agency Flow because that's the way that we get the fastest response to our clients. So just note that I did see it, and I'll go ahead and shoot you my response over here. So basically, it's just a very polite way to train them, okay, we're going to keep this on Agency Flow specifically. Now, if a client breaks this rules 3 times, as in they've done this, as I said, 3 times, then you're going to have a direct word with them. And this is definitely a red flag, because you've told them the way that you operate, and especially with your onboarding process, it should be very, very clear to them. The other thing that's very important to understand is a client should never, ever, ever call you. they should never have your phone number. And if they do, because some of my clients are like, I genuinely almost consider them friends, right? Like we've got great relationships. They should not be calling you. Because here's the thing, as an agency owner, you should never be reactive. Yes, of course you have to get back to clients, but you should have set times in order to do that. So let's say, a set time might be, for me, I wouldn't do it right before you get to your desk, but let's say, I understand you guys don't have the same sort of team that I do. So let's say first thing when you get to your desk, you do a 15-minute respond to client power session, and then you do a 3 or 4 hour, and obviously you'll have some breaks in between, but like heavy focus work block. And then you have lunch, and right after lunch, you have another set time. These are only like 4 hour differences. There's nothing on earth that's like so terrible, so egregious, so bad that like a client, you have to be online, right? And a 4 hours is the difference between make or break. Furthermore, your client should have an understanding that there is a 24-hour response rate time. Now you can tell them, look, 95% of the time, it'll be way quicker than that, but make sure that you don't double message or, freak out or anything if we don't respond within 24 hours. That's very normal. Most of the time will be a lot quicker than that, but sometimes there are certain life things. So just know we will get back to you. Now, the final thing that I kind of want to touch on is building rapport and trust with your clients. Now, the first thing that I recommend everyone do, and can be a part of your intake form when someone actually becomes a client of yours, is ask them their physical address, and I always send them out a gift. Now, I like to send them stuff related to watches, or if it's a guy and I know he likes cigars, I'll actually send him out some cigar stuff because that's a hobby of mine. I like to send us stuff that's like hobbies of mine, and people, my clients know that I'm passionate about it because once again, it's just, you start to form a really strong bond with your clients. And I know that you can't always do that with all your clients, and us specifically at my agency, we look for clients who are between the age of like 23 and 35. We don't like to work with anyone over the age of 35 because, I like to be able to joke around with my clients. I like to be able to, and you still need to keep an air of professionalism. And I know certain clients where I have to, kind of be a bit more professional, and other clients where I can kind of be a little bit more jokey and talk about their dating life, or talking about partying, or talk about some personal stuff even, and talk about like, you have to be very in tune with, what sort of client you're speaking to. So as I said, I like to break that professional boundary, but you should also know your edge, right? And you should also know how far to push it. Then 2 other tools I want you to use in your arsenal. And this is, this is the beauty of agency flow. Me and my business partner, the fact that we're both agency owners, this is the beautiful thing about the fact that, because between the two of us, we've been running an agency for a decade, right? So we have a lot of field experience, and we know the sort of things that we would like to experience. Slack, for example, Slack doesn't allow you to do GIFs natively, and the little plugins and stuff that they have with their API, it's pretty sloppy, right? With Agency Flow, you can put GIFs straight in there. Honestly, I know it seems stupid, but if you have that sort of client that is recipient to it, like we'll have, on Agency Flow with my clients, like we'll have threads of like GIFs going back and forth and this and that, and just like it builds this like community, like it builds this I don't know, it just builds this connection, with your client where it's more than just business. And of course you have to get them good results, and none of that stuff matters. But you'll be surprised, like your likability with a client and your rapport and your trust with a client is really actually quite close to where results are, because you can have the best results ever, but if a client doesn't enjoy working with you, or you guys don't have that sort of like good bond, a lot of times they'll just leave, honestly, because it just, they can't even, they're not even cognizant of the fact that you're getting good results, because they can't see past the fact that, maybe there's not a good personality match between you guys. And the next thing on this point is using voice notes. That's one of the biggest reasons that, I wanted to make Agency Flow, because I wanted to, as I said, have a software that was made for agency owners like us by an agency owner, who runs an online boutique agency and has been for the last 5 years. As I said, as well as my business partner who is in the exact same situation. So the reason I say all this is because voice notes, like for me, when someone can hear your voice, they can hear the intonation, all this stuff, it's super important. Now there's stuff for me that's, it's important that it gets indexed and, it is searchable. But if it's a specific question, I know that, in future, we won't need to search it up and look back at it or this and that. Voice notes are a beautiful thing, or you can send a message and then elaborate further on voice note. So, yeah, for me personally, I know not everyone's comfortable. I love to send voice notes. I send voice notes all the time because you can get so much more across. Like, let's say if you have 1 minute to type something or 2 minutes to type something compared to 1 or 2 minutes to send a voice note, you can get so much more across and so much more emotion, and the client can get a better feel and a better understanding. So ladies and gentlemen, the action step for today is I want you to open up the client communication plug and play and follow all the steps to make sure your retention is as high as it could possibly be. So I hope you guys enjoyed this module. As I said, this is one of those topics where I have to put up my hands and be like, I had one hypothesis for how things were, and it turns out for me, it's actually the complete opposite. Communication for me is a retention method. Okay, and it's something you need to really dial in, and it's something you'll learn over the years. So on that note, I hope you guys enjoyed. I'll catch you next one.